Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this discussion about our latest tool that we're rolling out, the IECC Checklists. Information about captions and subtitles and where to find a recording of the presentation can be found in the chat, so please take a look there if you're interested. Today, Keith Fox, our IECC lead, will be talking about our latest tool, the IECC checklists that we have rolled out. But before he does that, I'd like to take just a few minutes to set a little bit of context and background surrounding the why that is the foundation for why we're doing this. As we're trying to change the status quo in Denver, things like the checklist are tools that are intended to help everybody succeed in supporting the community and achieving the goals that are being brought to us. So just to talk very quickly about some of that, we know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the Denver development community right now, and that introducing new tools and new requirements is not something that everybody wants to see. Our tools are intended to help. The community is still coming to us with big goals related to equity and response to climate change and affordability, and it's our goal to continue to support those priorities that are being brought to us and to look out for Denver's long-term viability. We really have to look at the economic along with the environmental and the social factors all together at the same time to keep Denver viable for the long term. So we are talking a lot with the community, and we always welcome your voice. The way that we work, first the community speaks and we go through a series of stakeholder groups and committee discussions to really make sure we're getting all of the input. Then we create plans that kind of formalize some of those thoughts, and then we move on to regulations that are actually enforceable, and then we offer tools to help with those regulations being met. And that's what the checklist is intended to do. So the community and the market are pulling our work, not really vice versa. We're working together. It's also really important to mention the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency, I'll call them CASR, moving forward. This office was created formally in January of 2020, although the team existed for some years prior to then. It was created through a collaboration between the mayor and the community and conversations that they were having to elevate this voice, to provide this office with a voice directly to the mayor with their own executive director. And then just this last November, our voters passed a vote, funding for this office to continue the work. So that work started with the 80 by 50 plan, published 2.5 years ago already, with a commitment for the Denver community to lower greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 2005 levels by 2050. That was a pretty high aspiration at that point in time. 63% of those greenhouse gas emissions are attributable to buildings. So we know that buildings are really important. New buildings will make up 40% of the building stock in 2050. Like, those buildings will be built between now and then. So we know new buildings really matter. Existing buildings matter, cleaning up the grid matters. That work is ongoing in the background as well. That plan included a goal to get all new buildings to zero net energy by 2035. That goal has since been updated this last spring to 2030 through another series of conversations with the 2020 Denver Climate Action Task Force. That group of community stakeholders met with our CASR team over the course of 6 months and set a new goal to get our greenhouse gas emissions decreased by 100% by 2040. That affects buildings and homes. It means that our zero net energy reported outcomes in new buildings need to happen sooner, by 2030. So it means that we have to take all of these plans and figure out how to implement them through enforceable codes, and then work with the community to understand the best ways that we can help support that and which tools we can create. So the checklist is one of those tools that we've created because we think that it will help us stay on track. The trajectory is steep. We are going to keep amending the building codes in upcoming code cycles to stay on track with Denver's goals. It's true for commercial as well as residential. So these tools are going to be really important so that we can all keep succeeding. We don't have a choice about addressing our energy code compliant building stock, because that big green blob is the impact of all of our basic code compliant buildings. We can't get to our goals as a community without really raising the bar on basic code compliance and closing the gap between predicted energy use and actual energy use in buildings, which is going to take a change in thinking. and a change in how we work. We also have the voluntary Denver Green Code, which is worth mentioning. It's voluntary, but it's also a preview of what is likely to be discussed and considered to become mandatory in the next code cycle. So it's worth looking at so that you can prepare and know what's coming. The I-code amendment process, I'm not going to read this slide, I put it in here so that you can refer back to it. The I-code amendment process is the time for the community to get engaged and impact where the codes are going. We want you to work with us. We welcome you to. You can sign up for our newsletter, which will give you reminders for different opportunities to get engaged. In 2021, we will be talking about the next round of I-code amendments. We want to know the concerns that you have with the current building codes, and we will work with you to the maximum extent possible on things that are concerning. But we don't have the ability in the building department to change the codes unilaterally. So if you have concerns or interests in what in the amendments that are being introduced into the energy codes, please join us in 2021 and bring those, because that's the opportunity to change where the codes are going. So the key things, there are three key takeaways. The first one is to know that our amendments and our requirements and our tools are being created to support development community success in achieving the community's goals. The Denver Green Code is worth reading because it's a preview of what's likely to become mandatory, and the community is leading our regulations and work, so we really want to hear your voice. With that said, I'd like to turn this over to Keith Fox to talk about our specific new tool.
Thank you. My name is Keith Fox, and I'm the IECC lead engineer for the City and County of Denver. My background includes mechanical engineering, so I've been a mechanical engineer for the past 15 years, for the past 25 years, I'm sorry, and now I am the IECC lead engineer. I wanted to point out to everybody that we've got a new IECC checklist and an energy modeling report. That's what we're here to discuss today. And with that, we have on January 4th of 2021, all new commercial buildings will be required to have the IECC checklist and the energy modeling report submitted. These buildings include all new commercial buildings, all new multifamily and residential buildings, and new commercial tenant finish projects with area of work 10,000 square foot and more. The file locations where we can find these, if you go to denvergov.org/building code and scroll down, it'll have new IECC checklist for development projects. This is what you'll see on the screen. And you'll be able to click on any of these files depending on which path you're using, which compliance path you're using for the project. You can select that checklist, fill out the checklist, and submit it. And then the energy modeling report is also there for you to download and utilize when you fill it out and for your submittal. The checklist and the energy modeling report will be required to be submitted with the energy package that's going to be included with the construction documents at the login process. Next, I want to point out that Comm Check is now available for the City and County of Denver. It's available currently only on the desktop version. The web version is supposed to be updated hopefully by the end of this week is the goal. And the way you do that is you select code, pull it down, it'll have 2019 Denver, Colorado, and then you select either the 2018 IECC or the 90.1 ASHRAE standard. The reasons that we've got the checklist and the energy modeling report, as Christy mentioned, we want to support the community goals of trying to get to the net zero. And as we move closer toward getting to net zero, we're going to need to have as many tools as we can available to help teams succeed. This is the first step in moving toward outcome-based buildings, meaning that we're going to start comparing the EUIs of the buildings and make sure that they meet certain levels. And in order to do that, we're going to have these tools will be useful in helping the team succeed toward that. The IECC is ever evolving, and these tools are going to help us stay in alignment with the IECC. We're also hoping that these tools help the teams navigate the complexities of the IECC. We understand that they are complex and that we need to have tools to help teams get through the process. These tools will also increase the communication between the design teams, the energy modeling teams, the development teams, and the plan review teams, and also increase communication between the design team members. We're hoping that teams communicate better and work closer together to come up with these checklists, the energy modeling report, so that we can get better predicted EUIs, and they'll be closer to the actual EUIs that we will see when the buildings are actually built. We're using these to increase transparency between the design teams and the plan review teams. This way, the design teams can show us on the plan review team exactly how they're complying with each of the requirements, and it'll make it help us do a more in-depth review of the project, help us better understand your project as we're going through it, and hopefully provide better plan review comments and requirements. And the final thing that we want to do, as I've mentioned, is close the gap between the predicted EUIs and the actual EUIs. And that becomes very important as we move forward with the IECC and we start moving toward the outcome-based buildings. And at this time, I'm going to share my screen with the checklist and go through it. Okay, here is the compliance checklist, and I have selected the ASHRAE performance path. You can select any of the path. They're all fairly identical. The format's identical on all of them. You'll notice at the top up here in red, it'll have which path you're choosing. We want to make sure that all of the design team utilizes the same path. We don't want to have different paths for different portions of the project. Then you'll notice down at the bottom, the file will come in as an Excel spreadsheet. And at the bottom, there'll be different tabs. There's the general compliance tab, there's the building envelope tab, the HVAC tab, the service water heating tab, and the power and lighting tab. And all of these tabs are identical in format. They start with, they'll have blue cells in here. The baby blue cells are the cells that need to be filled out. What we're asking you to do is fill out the documents in completeness and then print them off and stamp and sign them, and then create the PDFs and then submit them with the energy package. Each tab should be printed as a separate PDF file. And the general compliance tab, we're asking for all of the design teams to sign it. And that includes the architect, the mechanical engineer, the electrical engineer, and the energy consultant, if there's an energy consultant on the project. We're also asking the lead design professional, which in most cases will be the architect, to stamp and digitally sign the document. And then each of the trade tabs will be signed by the engineer or architect that's developing the tab and the energy consultant. And we're asking the energy consultant to sign these as well as the engineer or the architect in order to maintain the communication between the groups and make sure that everybody's on the same path, so that the energy modeler is utilizing the same documents that the design team is utilizing for the design. Okay. The baby blue tabs, as I mentioned, will need to be filled out. And as we scroll down, the way the tabs are set up, it has all compliance path, or we're asking you to select the compliance path option here and include the valuation of your project. Then it goes into all compliance paths. And these are the items that are required for all the compliance paths, regardless of which path you're choosing. And we're just asking you to go through and fill out the documents. And in these paths, in these tabs, the items that need to be filled out are the plan drawings and reference number to demonstrate compliance, and the submitter notes. So we're asking you to identify where you're showing the information, where it's going to be provided on the drawings, and then any notes that you want to provide to the plan review team. And if it's not applicable, then just demonstrate why it's not applicable in this location. Then as we move down, we go into the general requirements, the general requirements tab for the ASHRAE performance. So these are those specific ones for each of the paths. And they're, again, the same way, just fill out the plan drawing and reference number where compliance is shown, and any notes that you want to provide to the engineers, to the plan review engineers. And then down here is where we're stamping and signing the project or the checklist. And all of these checklists are fairly identical in nature. And other than they have the different specific requirements for each path, but the format is the same. And the tabs all have the exact same format as well. The next item that we want to discuss is the energy modeling requirements. The energy modeling report that we're asking to be filled out. We understand that this report is not going to be filled out on our document. This is a PDF document. We're asking you to take and put the information into your own format. Please keep it in the same general format so that ease of review when we review it and go through it. So the way the energy modeling report starts is it starts with the introduction of the project. Just provide us the background of the project, provide us your energy model and assumptions and judgments. This is where we're asking you to tell us what assumptions you've made when you created the energy model. And I've listed some, for example, some assumptions that we're looking for. This will help with the plan review process. The next item we're looking for is several site predicted EUIs. There's the site PUIs and the source PUIs, both including and excluding parking. Then we're asking you to identify the top 3 items that consume energy and the top 3 items that conserve energy. And these we're just asking you to identify for us so we can use those for future on code development as well as look at this project and make sure that what we're seeing is the energy conservation items are being provided in the project. The next item we're asking for is a comparison of the PUIs versus the actual EUIs. We're asking you to provide an estimate of how close you think your predicted EUIs will be to the actual EUIs and what items you think will affect those being different. We're not asking that these items be an exact number, and we're not looking for a certain % of accuracy. We just want to know how you guys are predicting it to be accurate and how confident you are with your numbers. Then it goes down to selecting the applicable method that you're using for compliance. The next item is the summary table, where we're just asking you to summarize the project and provide the energy model or information there. The next item is the project square footage broken down by usage types. And then after that, we're asking for a comparison of the design versus the baseline values. Just providing the table, the baseline and the proposed design item for each of the items listed there, so we can compare how they're different. The next item is the summary of results. This is where we'll have the summary of the results that we can compare for the proposed model versus the baseline model. The next item is the description of energy efficiency or renewable energy measures implemented on the project. Identify any of these items that you're including on the project and where they're shown on the drawings. The next item is it continues on with that, but it gets into more detail. And we're looking for more detail for each of these items for the baseline and the proposed and the energy savings. And then we've got the performance cost index calculations. Provide that information for each of these items that we have, and then also your percent that it's better than the IECC or percent better than the ASHRAE 90.1, so that these can be compared during the plan review. And then the last item we're asking for is just a signed copy, a contract for the work to be completed by the firm responsible for the code compliance energy modeling. And just provide that information with the documents as you submit it. And then lastly, we've got the signatures of each of the design team members and also a stamp and electronic signature of the lead design professional. And I just want to point out that this document is very similar. This document and the checklist are very similar to what Boulder is utilizing at this time. So it's not exact. It's been modified for Denver's current amendments and our processes. But it's a similar type request and documents so that we can try to maintain some continuity with the other communities around. And at this time, we really want to stress that the reason that we're asking for these tools to be provided is to try to close the gap between the predicted EUIs and the actual EUIs. And as we've mentioned a few times, it's very important as we move closer to getting to net zero projects. When we get there, we're hoping that the predicted EUIs will be very close to the actual EUIs, and we can utilize those information as we move forward. At this time, I'm going to open it up for questions. And what we're asking you to do is to please provide your questions through the question and answer. Oops, I shared the wrong document.
Keith, we have one question in for you.
Okay, great.
So on one of the slides, it was noted that TIs over 1,000 square feet would require the checklist, but you mentioned that it was 10,000 square feet. Can you please confirm the square footage threshold for commercial TIs to require the checklist?
That is supposed to be 10,000 square feet. So it is over 10,000 square feet. The correct number is 10,000 square feet.
Thank you for clarifying, Keith. We'll get that slide updated before we post it online.
Yes. And I want to point out to everybody, we do have an open door policy. We want to hear all of your concerns, answer all of your questions, and we want to have an open dialogue with everybody. If you have any questions or concerns about it, please let us know. The documents, the tools that we are providing are the first iteration. They will need to be updated as we move forward and over time. So if you have any concerns about what would make it an easier document, please let us know. We'll take that into consideration and have a dialogue on that. Any questions that anybody has, feel free to reach out. I've given both my name and my phone number here. You can reach out to me and I will answer your question as soon as possible.
Thanks, Keith. We have another question here, and Christy, this might be a good one for you. Do you have any insight on the future of the Denver Green Buildings Ordinance?
Yeah, sure. So the Denver Green Buildings Ordinance isn't really expected to change a whole lot. We have a series of updates that we have worked on over the last year and a half with our GBO Technical Advisory Committee that will help to fix some of the little things in there that weren't entirely in alignment with the original intent, but there's no intention to use the GBO as an ongoing running tool that keeps changing and raising the bar. It right now it layers on top of the code, and it will continue to do so. Those updates that we are working through are in the process of being transferred into legal language, which will then be posted onto our website for public comments before they go forward to City Council. We anticipate go forward to City Council for proposed adoption. But again, those are not massive changes or changes in the intent of the document. They are changes in provisions of the document to better serve the intent of the original committee and the original document that was created.
Thanks, Christy. Keith, I've got another question for you. Where in the documents do you wish to have the checklist issued? And I'm just wondering if that means where in the plan submittal documents should the checklist live?
Okay, we're asking for the checklist and the energy modeling report to be submitted as separate PDF files. So they would just be included with the construction documents. They will not be located on the construction documents themselves. So just as a separate file to be submitted when you go through the login process.
Keith, another question for you. What is the specific date for projects being submitted in and after January to comply with these checklists?
Starting January 4th, all projects will be required to submit the checklist with their submittal. The intake team will put the project on hold and will not accept it for intake until this document is provided.
Keith, how is this validated during construction by the city and county of Denver? Will it include commissioning agent?
At this time, the checklist is utilized for plan review. The future goal is that this will be utilized through the construction process as well. But currently at this time, we've only got it for plan review.
Does this mean that every permit submittal will require an energy analysis separate from the Comm Check?
The Comm Check is required for the prescriptive paths, and the checklist will also be required. The energy analysis report is only for the energy modeling projects, the performance path projects. So it's not required with that. But the checklist is required in addition to the Comm Check. One of the items on the checklist does ask for the Comm Check to be submitted for the prescriptive path options.
I think you just answered this, but maybe clarify one more time. Is the Comm Check required in addition to the checklist?
Yes, it is. One of the items, like I just mentioned, on the checklist does ask for the Comm Check to be submitted. And we are asking that you utilize the new Denver specific Comm Check. And again, if you go to the codes, you can select the Denver specific Comm Check or Denver specific codes for the Comm Check. And that should include all of our new amendments.
We'll give everybody a few more minutes to enter in a last question. If there are any additional questions, please type them in the chat.
And again, if anybody has any questions, afterwards they can reach out to me. My email and my phone number are listed there. So just reach out to me and I will get back to you as soon as possible.
I don't see any other questions coming through, so thank you all for joining us today. We will post a recording of this presentation as well as the slide deck on our website on that Denver building or denvergov.org/building code. So you will be able to find it there. Oh, I see one more question pop in. Can you confirm the date for the cutoff?
The cutoff is January 4th of 2021.
Yep, so January 4th, Monday, January 4th is when these checklists will be required.
Yes.
Yes, a video will be available online on the Denver Gov website. You can find it there. Was there, Keith, was there a phased approach to requiring the checklist?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Was there a phased approach to requiring the checklist?
No, there's no phased approach. We're asking for the checklist to be submitted on all of the projects for new construction buildings, new multifamily residential buildings, and the commercial tenant finish projects over 10,000 square foot. So if you got a tenant finish project less than 10,000 square foot, you do not need to submit the checklist, but there is not a phased approach to bringing that in. It will be required on all projects starting January 4th.
I might just layer in that it's voluntary right now. It's been posted to our website, so use of it is voluntary until January 4th, and then it becomes mandatory on January 4th. And just to underscore again that the intention is to support code compliance, so there's nothing on the checklist that wouldn't be already included. Like the checklist is just a guide for us to be able to find the information in your documents that shows that the project is code compliant. So it's not raising the bar, it's not changing the requirements, it's just helping to guide us to see that you have provided the information to show code compliance. So it shouldn't be too onerous, we're hoping.
And with that said, just to expand, we do anticipate that all of the information we're asking for, you are already providing. It helps us identify where it's located, as Christy mentioned. So.
Keith, will there be an example PDF showing all tabs and Comm Check pages attached in order?
No, we haven't gone through that, but we are asking that each be submitted as a separate PDF document so that it's not one file that includes all of the documents.
Keith, is the IECC checklist specific per scope of a phased project? For example, would the IECC checklist be required for an excavation and shoring scope, foundation and superstructure?
My anticipation is that it would only be necessary for the superstructure. With that said, if you have a foundation that you're, say, building the first 4 floors of the project, then we would ask for it to be submitted with that as well. That way we could take a look at it ahead of time. But the superstructure is the critical point in which we would need to see the documentation.
Keith, there are multiple checklists on the Denver Gov website. Which checklist do we have to complete? The commercial IECC prescriptive, the commercial performance, or commercial energy modeling report?
Okay, the checklist, there's 4 different checklists. There's the IECC prescriptive, the IECC performance, the ASHRAE prescriptive, and the ASHRAE performance. We're asking for you to submit the checklist that's appropriate for the compliance path that you're utilizing. So if you're utilizing the ASHRAE performance, we're asking you to submit the ASHRAE performance checklist. The energy modeling report is required in addition to the checklist when you use either of the two performance paths. That's the IECC performance path and the ASHRAE performance path.
Keith, will the commercial ASHRAE prescriptive and commercial ASHRAE performance checklist be completed and submitted by the mechanical subcontractor?
What we're asking, because ASHRAE isn't just mechanical, ASHRAE affects all disciplines. So the checklist has the requirements for each of the disciplines on there. So the general compliance tab would be stamped by the lead design professional and then be signed by everybody, filled out by a collaboration between the entire design team. Each of the trade tabs would then be filled out by that specific trade engineer, whether it be mechanical, electrical, or the architect, and then also reviewed and signed by the energy consultant. That way there's some work collaboration between the design team on those portions of the project.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to go ahead and end our presentation today, and you can find a recording of this posted online on denvergov.org. Thank you all for joining us. And if you didn't know or you would like to join us tomorrow, we will be giving the residential checklist presentation. Keith, is it going to be similar to what you gave today for our commercial folks?
Yes, it'll be similar on the residential. It'll just be directly related to the residential projects.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us.